Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am the Zats Man, and I got brain rot. TikTok. I don't like it. The sheer onslaught of pure unfiltered content directly into the brainstem is too much for my millennial sensibilities. But because a content demon lives in my brain, I kept a burner account to see what kind of nonsense an algorithm would slop on my For You page. Spoiler alert. It was the Manosphere.
The Manosphere is a collection of websites, blogs, and online forums promoting masculinity, misogyny, and opposition to feminism.
Basically, the Manosphere is a bunch of dudes who have turned misogyny into a business model by marketing themselves towards angry, lonely, bitter, frustrated young men by providing emotional validation for their feelings and channeling those emotions into clicks and views and attention and revenue. And don't you just love the internet? So anyways, this one guy popped up on my For You page.
Never date a woman with a high body count. She's statistically more likely to have damaged her long-term ability to pair bond. Being physically attractive is the most important attribute for a man and a woman for dating. If you're under 5'8" as a man and you're not putting in the work, you're gonna get dominated by taller and more handsome men. Women in relationships tend to keep other males around as backup replacements in case anything goes wrong. Women initiate 80% of divorces, and that number jumps to 90% among college-educated women. The average guy is invisible to most modern women. You're gonna let her sleep around all throughout college in her 20s while you're sacrificing your 20s, stacking your bread. There are a lot of modern women out there that are panicking around the ages 28 to 31 because they're exiting the party phase and they're desperate to find a beta provider. They're thinking, please God, I know I've been a bad girl sleeping around with chads, but I'm ready to be a good girl the rest of my life if you give me a blue-pilled guy. And she typically finds a poor-souled simp to tie the knot, or she becomes a pompous career woman cat lady the rest of her life.
But what really drew me to this content is how he briefly flashes a scientific study on screen to embolden his claims and justify his racist diagrams. Nothing wrong with this. It seems like the student of men's lifestyle is presenting objective facts about human psychology. Sorry, I mean evolutionary psychology, because he cited a scientific paper. Unfortunately, when it comes to academic papers, this student commits the critical error of not actually reading them. How do I know this? Because I did. I read them. I'll be using these TikToks as an example of how these Manosphere guys misrepresent data to craft a narrative that supports their worldview and their bizarre racist diagrams. And then, you know, we'll get existential about this whole Manosphere thing, because that's what I love to do. First, scientific studies. How do you understand them? Parsing through them as a regular person can be daunting because of all the technical jargon and an endless list of sources cited within the document itself that provides additional context. This is why many people read the top line abstract and call it a day. And while that can give you a succinct summary, oftentimes the devil's in the details. I am not a science guy, but all academic papers follow a structure that tells you, what do they tell you? It tells you the area of study, why it's important, how they conducted their research, their results, their interpretations of the results, the limitations of their studies, and suggestions for further research so they can keep studying. You may not understand all the numbers and the p-values, but they'll explain it to you in the discussion sections. Understanding the parameters, the terminology, how they conducted their research, and why is key, because you risk extrapolate. Am I saying that word right? Because you risk extrapolating the research beyond the scope of what's actually in the paper. On the meta side, you have to consider types of scientific evidence, i.e., where this paper fits in the literature on the strength of its evidence. There is a big difference between citing a cross-sectional study or survey versus a meta-analysis or systemic review. The latter can help mitigate bias from individual studies, reviewing the quality of that research, thereby providing a more clear picture of science stuff. You don't want to be the type of person who cherry picks individual facts from individual studies under the guise of being a rational big boy who only delivers the most objective facts about human nature. Gather around, kids, it's fact-checking time. We're gonna fact-check a weird internet guy. That's the man and man the Zats. We're gonna do it all, it's fact-checking time.
Being physically attractive is the most important attribute for a man and a woman for dating. Attractive people have more dates than less attractive people. Both men and women who are physically attractive are perceived to have better personalities than unattractive people. Attractive people are more likely to be hired at jobs than less attractive people. Women want a man with high income. Attractive men are most likely to get that. Women want a man with high status. Attractive men are most likely to be the ones to acquire that. Women want a man that's desired by other women. Attractive men, etc. etc, etc, etc.
The overarching point he's making is that looks and status are the most important thing for a man because women want both. And here are the studies to prove it. You don't have looks, get status, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The first paper he cites comes from 1966, where Walster et al. Were testing the matching hypothesis, which claims that people are more likely to choose partners who are at similar levels of physical attractiveness or perceived to be within their league. 752 freshman students bought tickets for a computer match dance, where they'd be randomly paired up with a blind date. When they bought the tickets and filled out a personality questionnaire, 4 college sophomores secretly ranked them in terms of physical attractiveness as a measure of social desirability. They were told that the data from the questionnaire would be used to match them with an ideal partner, when in fact the pairing was done randomly. During the dance, participants were asked to rate their dates, and they found that everyone, regardless of their own degree of physical attractiveness, liked best and most often asked out the extremely attractive dates. Hence, their findings failed to support the matching hypothesis. Case closed. Except, the study lacked ecological validity and has limitations that the authors themselves acknowledge. The experiment didn't accurately reflect dating, as the possibility of rejection was reduced, and since the students briefly interacted with each other at the dance, their personalities might have not come through. If you spend a few hours no strings attached with a pretty person, you're probably going to enjoy that, although you wouldn't find yourself in that situation if you were afraid of getting rejected when you asked them out. Finally, we're dealing with 18-year-old freshmen from the University of Minnesota in 1966, and what their standards were for being physically attractive, which even within that specific context might have been unreliable due to how quickly they were initially rated and how their appearance could have changed for date night. They would have gotten drip. They got all the drip. The second paper cited replicated the Walser experiment with slight modifications to account for the possibility of rejection, and found that the principle of matching was present under every condition, which is different from the results of the first. As for the notion that
attractive people have more dates than less attractive people,
in the study they found that female physical attractiveness was strongly correlated with dating frequency, whereas physical attractiveness for men was more strongly correlated with friendship popularity rather than their dating frequency, because men place more importance on physical attractiveness in dating than women do, almost as if men and women have different views of what comprises physical attractiveness, but I be getting ahead of myself. Research on physical attractiveness is often affected by beta bias. Not that beta bias, beta bias, as it usually focuses on male views. This is kind of what Walmart Justin Timberlake is doing here. He'll generalize vague notions of physical attractiveness in different areas to get to his conclusions about looks hierarchies or what someone's objective mate value is. Meanwhile, the studies show that men value physical attractiveness more than women in relationships, making the concept of physical attractiveness an unreliable motivator across genders. But okay, women also want a man with resources and status, and doesn't physical attractiveness benefit people when it comes to employment? What about the halo effect? The source he cites that physically attractive men are more likely to make higher income says right on the first page that there is no one universal standard of beauty. It's difficult to measure, and even then, it's not a fixed factor. Yes, physically attractive people can earn more, but it depends on the occupation. A beauty premium is particularly apparent in jobs where there is a productivity gain associated with physical appearance, though this varies for men and women and across different countries. People sort into occupations relative to their overall characteristics. Good-looking people take jobs where physical appearance is deemed important, while less attractive people steer away from them, or they are required to be more productive to earn the same wage. There's nuance, and I'm just reading the first page. In any case, determining the root of this beauty premium, whether it comes from employer discrimination or customer discrimination, can be difficult to measure, but this is a labor market issue, and as such, the cited source makes policy suggestions that could remedy this wage gap, such as anonymous job applications, or having employers provide in-house training for appealing sales characteristics. Jobs.
Women see status more as a necessity than a luxury when it comes to long-term dating, according to this study. For casual relationships, obviously looks and sex game are going to be the most important factors, but for long-term relationships, resource potential and status become the most important factors. There's a guy who's a 5 out of 10 looks, but he's making top 10% male income, which is $157,000 a year, compared to a guy who's a 7 or 8 out of 10 in looks, and he's making the average $50,000 a year, she's gonna choose the more wealthy guy.
According to this study, women see status more as a necessity. But why? Let me tell you about history. Well, from a socio-cultural perspective, women in societies have had relatively less access to status, power, and resources, so they seek out men with these traits to gain upward mobility. As we saw previously with the beauty premium, the effect is more pronounced with men, and the trend seems to be that men on average earn greater incomes than their female counterparts. I wonder why. The study in question allocated a partner characteristic budget to people and found that when budgets were low and choices were constrained, women spent more on resource allocation and men spent more on physical attractiveness. Conversely, as budgets expanded and choices were less constrained, men and women became more similar in their choices, valuing traits like personality, kindness, and intelligence, with less of an emphasis on prior necessities. This whole look maxing, be a savage and grind your way to the top mindset that he's pushing goes counter to what's actually stated in the studies he's citing. The authors state that they believe that people prioritize attractiveness and status in looking for potential partners, but only until sufficient levels have been reached for both parties. Yoink! You can improve your attractiveness up to a point, and then further effort might be better directed at other areas. For men, being an absolute savage on that grind may not be as appealing to women as being gainfully employed and using that time to develop other traits. There isn't an objective hierarchy of looks and status here. It's about meeting minimal sufficient standards, and this depends on your needs and whom you interact with. In addition, we're perhaps overlooking that it's the traits associated with attributes like physical attractiveness or social status that contribute to a person's desirability. Yes, the halo effect can be a factor, and physical attractiveness is usually correlated with beneficial qualities. However, it's difficult to measure how much weight one puts on each of these characteristics when judging a person. You can meet a conventionally attractive person who you find boring, and you can meet someone less conventionally attractive who has all the qualities you like in a person.
Women in the study were 93% more likely to marry a man who makes more money than her when she's more educated than him. Most American women want to get married, but the amount of eligible bachelors that have a stable job and meet the income threshold that they desire is low. Of people that are ages 18 to 29, 64% of men are single and only 34% of women are single. So I personally believe there's a portion of young women that are dating men in their 30s who have established careers and are making more money. Yes, they're going to be a bit more intelligent and mature, but I think the main driver is income.
But no, the main driver for modern women seems to be income, because they're getting more education and higher paying jobs. And yet 93% are more likely to marry men in a higher income docile, and this is because of their natural built-in preferences, because we've evolved that way.
Just like how men like me have evolved to be attracted to a woman who has a low waist to hip ratio. It signals that she's fertile and has the resources ready.
The study cites points out that despite a reversal in the gender gap in education, the wage gap between men and women still persists. After all, men do not need equivalent levels of education to have higher incomes than women. Also, the type of people who got married tended to avoid status reversal and maintain traditional gender role expectations. So while you can in one breath say that women want a man with a higher income, you also point out that men appear hesitant to marry a woman with a higher socioeconomic status, because the girl boss who earns more money than them is intimidating and emasculating, and you can't have that. When he points out how there aren't enough eligible bachelors to reach an undisclosed income threshold that women desire, this has less to do with their natural inclinations and more to do with the material conditions of living in modern society. With the increased cost of living, it's harder for young people to meet and date potential life partners, when half of them are living at home and are trying to build careers for themselves. There's less economic mobility due to income inequality, more social isolation, and difficulties finding third space to build and maintain a healthy social life because we're working all the time. These challenges are compounded when you add in racial dynamics and systemic discrimination to the equation, which puts additional roadblocks in place that prevent those in marginalized communities from achieving that supposed income threshold. When I see these points brought up in Manosphere type videos, it all seems to be in service of some reactionary gender culture war, while ignoring the larger systemic issues at the core of these dating woes. You should be advocating for things like better education, affordable housing, access to healthcare resources, and stronger labor rights, because that's way more attractive than using a term like the sexual marketplace. So you're seeing a trend now, right? This is the modus operandi. Cherry pick a selected scientific paper or data set to pass off that you're supporting an objective worldview about human mate values through facts and logic, while leaving out certain details like context or whether the research is sound. Pointing to Pew Research data, like 63% of men ages 18 to 29 are single versus the 34% of women in that same age bracket. Therefore, they must be dating older men with more money because of their natural drive towards higher incomes, ignores any sort of nuance with those figures and other relevant statistics, like how it breaks down demographically, whether those singles are even interested in a relationship and why, the types of relationships they are looking for, and what their expectations are for a partner. According to Pew, women are roughly 3 times as likely as men to say they wouldn't be in a relationship with someone who makes significantly less money than them. But this was less important than their age, whether they're in debt, how far away they live, and who they voted for. Income wasn't as big a deal breaker as voting for Donald Trump. Women also bear the brunt of harassment and are twice as likely as men to cite increased risk as a reason why they think dating has gotten more difficult over the past 10 years. But let's ignore that so you can keep framing this one-sided view. Women want a tall man. Here's the study. Except the study cited found that mutual mate choice for stature in a speed dating setting results in suboptimal pair formation for both sexes. It's the title. Matches were more likely at an intermediate height difference, which differed significantly from the preferred height differences of both sexes. The study is highlighting the value of following the mate choice process beyond preferences through to pair formation. Just because somebody says they have a preference, that doesn't always translate to who they end up dating. Even within the study, non-preferred potential partners with respect to height still had a high, albeit reduced, chance of being chosen. As the authors point out, outside of a restrictive speed dating context, there will be a larger magnitude of couple assortment because there are more people available and a finite number of preferred partners on the basis of a single specific variable that's being chosen in a 3-minute vacuum. Short kings don't fret. Some people care and some people don't. You will have your time to shine. Want another study? Be careful, fellas, because according to the mate switching hypothesis, women keep backup mates and will leave you if someone with a higher mate value comes along. RIP if you aren't in the top 20% of mate value. It's evolution, baby. This video already got dunked on by other TikToks because the paper he cites points out that infidelity rates are twice as high with men and that such a hypothesis would apply to both men and women. Besides being a hypothesis that generates novel predictions as yet untested, certain reasons as to why a mate switch would occur are overlooked, as well as the potential trade-offs and risks with leaving your partner for Giga Chad or Michael Cera. Who wants to be locked in a battle to the death with Michael Cera? But don't you understand? Women always have options. So you need these essential dimensions of mate value because after all, they file for 80% of the divorces. But why? Surely there must be reasons. When you do a deeper dive into the concept of mate value, not only were other traits beyond status and resources listed, like emotional stability, dependability, confidence, intelligence, and kindness, the researchers in the study claim to have calculated any mate value discrepancy from an objective mathematical comparison, but then say that this objective analysis weighted all these preferences equally, when they know people across cultures weigh preference dimensions differently. What's exhausting about dealing with this kind of content beyond reading a bunch of papers for 60-second TikToks is that they're kind of right, but they're going about it all wrong. Saying physical attractiveness and status matters when looking for a partner is obvious. It's a no-brainer. But then they take this innocuous statement and run it through the Manosphere mindfuck jujitsu to get to their bizarre looks hierarchy graphs without a critical examination of what we mean when we say looks matters or status is important. Just looking at physical attractiveness, if you've ever spoken to a woman, you'll quickly realize that how they measure physical attractiveness is very different from how a man would measure physical attractiveness. These perceptions can vary depending on how you present yourself, how you carry yourself, what kind of social circles you run in, and your environment. Do you dress well? Do you smell good? Are you fun, ambitious, or empathetic? Do you take care of yourself? Do people like you? Do you have things that you're passionate about? Do you have shit going on in your life? There are a few videos where Nick gets roasted in the comment section for his appearance and uses that as proof that looks matter. And although I don't condone making fun of someone for how they look, the reason why he's getting roasted like that is because of what he's saying. I've known dudes who resemble him to a T, yet they were more attractive because they were normal, chill, cool guys who were fun to be around, and not making weird misogyny TikToks about mate value or looks hierarchies. The tragedy here is that it isn't looks that's holding him back. It's the content and the worldview that is unattractive. The irony is palpable. This is part of my absolute cursed working theory called the Hassan Shapiro Freaky Friday theory. Hot take, but I think physically speaking, both men can be seen as being conventionally attractive. However, Hassan gets seen as a sexy boy, whereas Benny Boy does not.
This magnificent piece of pop.
I would like to buy a single wood, and I would like it to be bagged, please. Oh, I'm so triggered! Why would he buy a single plank from Home Depot? I'm so mad right now!
If you swapped out nothing but their personalities, which is the way they come across, their attitudes, their beliefs, their fashion sense, and their routines, Hassan's brain and Hassan's brain and Ben's body would be more cooler and attractive, whereas Ben's brain and Hassan's body would probably be a more annoying, just as bigoted Steven Crowder type. There's a universe where that exists, and I'm sorry. Roughly quoting FD, sourcing CJ the X here, good looks aren't value, money isn't value, value is value. Finding someone physically attractive just means that you think they are physically attractive. Looks may be the gatekeeper, but you just have to get your foot in the door. This make-believe ranking hierarchy doesn't matter. It's green light, red light. What's considered conventionally attractive according to certain societal standards may not be in line with what a particular person personally finds attractive. To borrow a phrase from Tara Mooney, beauty is art, and art is subjective. Different people like different features and different aesthetics. Women aren't a monolith. Men aren't a monolith, but everyone has a type. Everyone has their own standards. This also applies to resources, whether that be financial or, you know, emotional. Women most likely care less about an absolute income number and more if their partner has the means to take care of themselves and to provide in some capacity. It's the correlation of the beneficial qualities of what's considered attractive. The resourcefulness behind the acquisition of resources. If resource acquisition mattered most to women, then why is Elon Musk the most divorced dad on the planet? Every time I hear someone comment on a non-conventional couple like, oh, he must be loaded, sometimes, sure, or they just like each other. Some dudes can't compute this, so they try to put on a rational, logical explanation to it using charts, graphs, and all this other crap, but sometimes there is no logic behind it. They just like each other. Love is love, baby. All this stuff is fucking obvious if you've ever interacted with another person. To be clear, it's easy to see how unsuspecting guys get sucked into this stuff because not all of it is overtly terrible. Like a Jordan Peterson type telling you to clean your room or take some personal responsibility isn't bad advice. Certain personalities delivering information like this tend to appeal to men's sensibilities, especially younger men who are unsure of themselves, seeking guidance, or like a girl hurt their feelings or something like that. Modern life is difficult and we're inundated each day with thousands of opinions from different people, from different walks of life, about everything. It's overwhelming and confusing, so this type of content serves as an oftentimes toxic way to channel those emotions to a form of entertainment palatable to its target demographic. Basically, the manosphere is cope. It's modern day man cope. So dudes eat this stuff up because it validates their feelings, motivates them to make some positive changes. It's all resonating and they go, wow, the world makes so much sense now. Thanks, internet daddy. Thus, they'll be more receptive to any other thoughts that come from their parasocial faves or whomever else is in that space, even if it's nonsense. What other mystical wisdom does this person possess?
If I was getting drunk and screwing men until I died from exhaustion, I'd be happy. Mario may be a very good person, but he's a bad plumber. It's unbelievably sad. My penis is crooked.
I came across Modern Wisdom podcast host Chris Williamson, seen here having recently escaped from Shawshank prison, through videos talking about overcoming social anxiety or difficulties people have with dating apps. These general wide appealing topics are designed to hook you and funnel you into his content because Chris seems relatable and well spoken, an independent actual thinker if you will. But then I'll have the likes of the critical drinker on his show bemoaning about how woke Hollywood hates men and emasculated Thor in the latest MCU film, or have Mike Thurston thirsting over how that Andrew Tate fellow is just a really nice guy.
Yeah, I met him in real life, and he's actually an even better guy. He's like a nice guy.
Real stand-up top G, so long as you forget about the abuse and the trafficking charges. I'll make fun of Fresh and Fit with Hamza.
Which one is Fresh?
He's the one that always sounds like he's got food in his mouth.
Accurately pointing out their content strategy.
They purposefully go out of their way to find the thottiest, most ratchet, degenerate girls that they can from the streets of Miami, and they invite them round. They use it as their opportunity to outwit the only other people in Miami that they can.
And claims that he wants to raise men up, and he doesn't like content shitting on women.
Content that I don't like that comes out of the Manosphere Red Pill YouTube space is the stuff that is predicated on shitting on women rather than raising up men.
But then he'll feature guests who are anti-feminist, sex negative, anti-sex work.
If it's really the case that sex work is work, then what is the problem with being asked by your boss to give him a blowjob? It's work. It's just a service. It's like being asked to do overtime or make a coffee. No one actually thinks that it's just like making a coffee.
Who just so happen to spout the same conservative, trans-exclusionary rhetoric, but he doesn't like content shitting on women, you guys. So long as you fit within the paradigm of traditional patriarchal monogamous gender roles. I looked up some of the guests on Chris's show, and guess what? They all coincidentally appear on the same types of podcasts as you'd expect. Did anime turn Mr. Beast sidekick trans? Nani? Don't worry, babe. I'm not like all the other podcast bros. I'm different, I swear. But they are. And I'm tired. I originally planned on doing a deeper dive into this whatever podcast because you can't set foot online without one of their videos being recommended to you. Given their history of being a shitty YouTube prank / PUA channel.
Really?
That was him.
You seriously just do that? Dude.
No, dude.
To now being a shitty podcast, it's clear that they are just making whatever content can get them the most attention based on what's popping off at the moment. There's nothing original about it. They are literally following the Ben Shapiro formula of debating inarticulate young people about feminism or whatever, provoking their guests over the course of a few hours so they can get a 30-second soundbite to clinch him and add to the SJW feminist owned compilation. The creators are deliberately being provocative and generating outrage bait to draw in the most amount of viewers, either through the incel misogynist types who love seeing women get wrecked by logic, or getting people to react and dunk on them for their garbage takes. Hot tip: if you can be polarizing and get attention from people who hate you, you too can become a content creator. I tried watching some of their videos in earnest, but it's so frustratingly toxic and brain dead that I just stopped, because taking care of your mental health is vital. If I want to watch people attempting to make fools of others, I'd rather turn on Just for Laughs, an actually funny prank show. Everything inside of this Mano Dome turns into one big content blob. Everything on a loop. Everything repeating over and over. With all these podcasts, dating advice coaches, and influencer gurus being just as unique as another TikTok dance trend. The redundancy is amplified by the app's design, as you're swiping through an endless parade of the same talking points, the same rhetoric, the same presentation, the same evolutionary psychology nonsense that's been debunked by the likes of Mooncat, FD, Turb, or literally any reasonably smart person who stitches his content on TikTok. I didn't want to make the video focusing on Walmart Justin Timberlake because really, how much relevancy do they have? Anyone can say the type of shit that he says. It's McDonald's content. Ba 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 ba. I don't like it. At a certain point, I just asked myself, what are we doing here? What am I trying to do here? Is this really how I want to make content? The Manosphere was giving me an existential crisis. I'm gonna stand up. Let's talk about authenticity from an existentialist lens. There are many different schools of thought within existentialism, but broadly speaking, the central idea is that existence precedes essence. We exist, and then after that, we define ourselves or give meaning to our existence. That's what we do. There are two main aspects to the human condition: our facticity, being in reality. We have no control over being thrown into the world where we embody a meat sack. Fortunately, we're self-conscious and can make decisions about what we want to do. So even if we are limited by this facticity, we have the freedom to act upon it and transcend any given situation. We are not just objects that exist. We have a felt sense of subjectivity, where existentialist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre or Simone Beauvoir or Simone Beauvoir, I can't say their names, or Simone Beauvoir. If you deny or over-identify with any of these two aspects, you're being inauthentic or acting in bad faith, because at any given moment, you have both, and you're deceiving yourself about the human condition. This creates a problem for the self, as human beings in their view are always in the process of remaking or modifying themselves and negating their identity through moment-to-moment actions. You can change your identity. You've done it before and you'll do it again. You can take a different path or see yourself in different ways. Did I think I see myself as a content creator a few years ago? No, but I do now, or at least when I'm making content or describing myself as such, but not all the time. And for Sartre, we're not defined by a given facet of our identity. We are free to negate these facets constantly, as one's existence and one's projection of the self are separate and within our control. So if the self is always unstable and never fully realized, how can I be genuine or true to myself? How? Sartre provides an answer to this conundrum by saying that authenticity is an acceptance of the instability and ambiguity of the human condition. The point of authenticity, then, is not to be concerned with who I am, but with what I do. That is, realizing our own freedom through meaningful projects in the world and taking responsibility for how these projects might enhance or diminish freedom for others. Sartre argues that we exist as a being for others, un être pour autrui. Which is to say that we understand ourselves through the look of the other. We see other people and go, oh shit, people. And they look at us and go, oh shit, people. But because of an inability to see ourselves as they see us, this strips us of our subjectivity, making us feel like objects being perceived and reducing us to a facticity. It sort of creates a power struggle with both sides trying to assert their subjectivity by turning the other into an object. But this objectification is inauthentic being for others, because it involves the denial of our fundamental human condition, that we have transcendence. So rather than seeing the other as an object to be possessed and manipulated, we should be striving towards an authentic being for others, acknowledging and encouraging each other's freedom and subjectivity through mutual recognition. Thereby we can create meaning, taking responsibility, and living life to the best. Philosophy involves a lot of jargon to say some obvious stuff. My question is, am I being authentic in making this video about Manosphere content? Because at a certain point in the creative process, your why starts faltering, and you can struggle with tying everything together. I chose this topic because I saw a guy on TikTok who was very wrong, and I wanted to make a video about them. I think a lot of my philosophical issues with this content are shared by others. They misrepresent scientific information and don't acknowledge the complexities of human nature, thereby limiting the authentic freedom of many who touch that worldview. Quite literally, they objectify women by pushing regressive views to appeal to other online guys who believe them. As someone who makes stuff and puts it on the internet, seeing this is depressing on so many levels. Not only because of the very existence of a persistent misogyny industrial complex, but also a visceral feeling of, this is what you like. Really? Really? This is what gets rewarded? This is what gets rewarded. No matter how much fact-checking or debunking you do, if enough people buy what they're selling, this content will continue to exist in one form or another, incentivizing others to build their audience in similar ways. So long as they keep on pushing this content out consistently, even if it's awful, these creator numbers go up, they get more views, more followers, more attention, gaining more traction, gaining more clout, so the cycle reinforces itself. These Manosphere videos serve as fuel for myself and others to dunk on them, but by giving them that attention, I am also fueling their relevancy, and in a sense, validating them for what they're doing in the first place. It's not the debunking aspect I have a problem with. It's good to push back on all the bad ideas espoused by the Manosphere with mockery and reason. Dunk on these clowns. Stunt on these hoes. However, I'm concerned about the potential symbiotic relationship that can develop through relying on this antagonism. Developing your creative output through the relevancy of other internet figures or trends. And I also find myself paradoxically linked with that very same content I'm decrying, as we're both adhering to the same mechanisms and incentives that dictate how content is created online. The existential horror is that we're both doing content creation, but they're the ones getting the views. for that. And that is part of the reason why I'm making this video. And I don't like that. I don't want to limit myself creatively through the conception and execution of these videos. I don't want to limit myself by focusing on weird niche internet TikTok guys. I don't want to compare my metrics to the metrics of those spreading nonsense. I want to do better than live in the shadow of reactionaries who dominate our attention economy. Of course, you can't deny algorithms and how our online content space works, but you also can't deny that you have the freedom to transcend it all and make whatever you want. Part of this existential angst is that I don't want to make just video essays or commentary videos or reaction videos or whatever. I just want to make stuff. And when that's combined with the ambiguity of not knowing how I fit into this online ecosystem or how I want to make content, I end up spending way longer writing a video because I end up questioning why I'm making it in the first place. And that's fine. Through the process of doing this, I learn more about myself, and this will inform me moving forward. This is a message I'm trying to pass on to you. In the face of all this existential horror, you have to keep doing, because if you keep putting out good energy into the world, you'll find a groove and discover something that makes you happy. You'll discover good vibes, a sense of purpose, and your own sense of authenticity. And when everyone can find their authenticity, it shows everyone else what's possible creatively, emotionally, all that good stuff. This is what I'm trying to do here. It's why I couldn't just make this video about debunking a weird guy on TikTok. That's what all these other videos are for. Go watch them after. And it's also why I wanted to finish this video, instead of giving up. Are you sensing a theme with my channel? Philosophy involves a lot of jargon to say some obvious stuff. I think individually and as a society, we can all do better than the manosphere. I want to do better than the manosphere. I guess the real lesson here is, stop using TikTok. Bye. It
doesn't matter what comes, fresh goes better in life. With Mentos fresh and full of life, nothing gets to you. Staying fresh, staying cool. With Mentos fresh and full of life, fresh goes better. Mentos freshness, fresh goes better with Mentos. I'm losing my mind.
Mentos, the fresh maker.